Hello, everyone, and welcome to Collision Repair Magazine's Industry Insider Radio, a podcast for shops, shop owners, techs, and every level of the collision repair industry. I'm your host, James Kerr. Hey, collision repair shops, you could be leaving money on the windshield. For the last 20 years, shops have been reflecting on the role of glass in their business. In-house, subletting, who do you trust? This episode, we're framing glass in your collision repair business with Novus Glass. What you don't know about glass repair. It's a fully transparent interview today on Industry Insider. Today's episode is brought to you by Novus Glass. Repair first, replace when necessary. The affordable auto glass solution. For more information on Novus Glass, please visit their website at www.novusglass.com. I've got two guests with me in the studio today. I have Zakari Krieger, the VP of Prime Car Care, and I have Vern Gervais, who is the National Director of Novus Glass Canada. Hello, guys. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you, James.
Very well.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. So, pardon all my puns, but yes, a fully transparent interview with Novus Glass. Let's talk about glass, because glass is a big topic. So can you walk me through the traditional relationship glass has had with collision repair shops?
Yeah, sure. So I would say from a traditional perspective, when we look at how we interacted historically, it was one of basically from the glass industry's perspective was always a sublet service to a collision industry. So for a variety of reasons, we would typically be requested to come to a collision shop. In most cases, remove glass for either collision repair to a panel, remove glass for painting reasons so that there's no paint edges, those sorts of things. And then once that type of work had been completed, if it was minor work, then we would be called back in to reinstall basically at the end of their process, and we would be basically kind of the last guys in, just pre-cleanup, reinstall the glass, and then they would make the car prepared for delivery.
So kind of a hired gun structure.
100%.
You come in, you go pew pew pew. Well, not pew pew pew, but you come in and you do your work, and away you go. So, what kind of relationship were you having with the shops to do that? You'd be servicing many shops.
Yes, definitely. It was all from a mobile perspective. All of the glass shops that would service collision industry would have to have mobile service as a tool in their arsenal, obviously. It was always, I would say, 99% of the time where we would be visiting the shop because the car is either immobile or just didn't make logical sense to move the car into a shop. So the mobile auto glass part of our business is who would service the collision shops.
Okay. So you're the national director for Novus Glass Canada. So you've got a pretty top-down perspective on this structure. What changed?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that have changed. And before I talk about change, I would suggest that there's probably still those relationships that exist in some locations where they're still from the collision perspective, where they're still having that relationship with glass facilities as a sublet. To talk about what's changed, I think there's three primary things that I see of creating this change, I guess. The fees that are associated with the glass removal and reinstallation, they've kind of been stagnant over the last 10 years, to be quite honest with you. And so that's created some challenges from the collision perspective and that relationship between sublet and collision shop. one of the things we need to keep in mind is every one of those jobs basically is 2 visits. So it's 2 service calls, if you will, one to remove, and then that's a call back a second time. So it's all of those things. I think another piece of that would be the complexity of cars today. It's becoming more complicated. It's taking longer to do. There's more interior pieces that need to be taken apart before you can get at that glass. There's airbags to continue with. So there's a lot of things there that, I guess if you had to lump it up, it's more labor intensive. I guess the third thing would be, some of the challenges really back from a glass shop, not having, listen, the glass industry is faced with the same as everybody else in the auto industry, is staffing, right? And so when you're forced to look at your business and the amount of staff that you have, I think you need to consider, and a lot of shops have considered, do we continue with the B2B type of strategy to support that side of the business? Or do we take the little bit of resources that we have and look at that and focus more on the retail side? And I would say a good chunk, and I don't think I'd be stretching it to say 50% of the industry, the glass industry, has chosen to go to the retail side of the business. And so that, I think, is the biggest piece of the relationship that's changed. So it's just making it harder for collision shops to find good and trustworthy sublets.
I don't want to make it sound like there's one solution for the collision repair industry. Shops are all very different. Rural shops and urban shops and all the shops in between have different needs, and the needs of glass can be very different. I imagine that having to book somebody to come in to do glass and then having to book somebody in to do glass again can sometimes really hurt your turnaround time if schedules are in conflict. But it may just not be necessary to have somebody in if staffing is already a concern. I've never heard of a shop where staffing wasn't a concern. So, but it can be tricky. It can be tricky for a shop to try and find what are the things that are going to meet my needs as a shop. What's going to make the most sense for me? And I think at the heart of that is probably having a good relationship with a glass company, right?
100%. Relationships. In my previous life, I was a franchisee, dealt with many body shops in my time. And there was a lot more body shops within the market that I operated in that we did not do work for because we had a strong retail presence. That being said, there was relationships, those shops that you could build relationships with and respect each other's needs, we'll call it that. We found a healthy balance, and shops can find a healthy balance, both collision and glass shops, if they choose to do so, if they take the time to build those relationships. I think to add to that, there's time for a collision shop and the amount of time that they could, if you can't come today, for example, to put that glass in, you can come tomorrow, that's fine. Well, those sorts of things, those timelines are getting tighter and tighter, and those delivery schedules are getting tighter and tighter. And so I think it plays a part as well, right?
So what's attractive about bringing glass in-house? It's the convenience that you don't need to book somebody, but then you need to have enough glass work for them in-house, right?
Yeah. I think it's a couple of things on the, where we're seeing the industry trend to bring that in-house. I think there's a part there that is obviously the downtime of the vehicle, the deliverable of the vehicle, not having to wait and count on somebody else. But it's also, I think, in the industry, we're starting to see a trend towards one-stop kind of shop. We're starting to see, the collision industry, as we talked about before going on air, the ability to add more services to their collision side of their business, more of the one-stop shop type of scenarios. Within our network, we have what we call super centers. So they have collision, they have auto glass, and they have mechanical service under our Speedy Auto Service brand. And so you can see where that's, and those businesses, I think they tie into one another. In the collision space, they need both of those services almost, by default in a collision scenario. So I think that's an attraction. I don't know, Zach, do you have anything to add to that? But that's how I see that developing.
Yeah, from my previous life, being on the, in the mechanical sector, in parts distribution and service for many years, what I saw from my experience with the collision shops was there was a lot of that subletting going on. And, we had a situation that we sold some ADAS equipment into some collision shops. And one of the pushbacks that we had is there wasn't the expertise or understanding to be able to operate that ADAS equipment. So they couldn't actually facilitate that work and ended up getting out of that ADAS business to start subletting it again. So it's those dynamics to say that as a network, we're here to be able to provide training, operational support, and everything that we have to offer to be able to support them with ADAS, to support them with, with R&I, support them with replacement, and to be able to be that complementary and support system that allows them to not have to rely on external partners, but be able to train their staff within their facilities to complement their businesses and to operate their businesses efficiently.
So it's not just an issue of volume. Do I have enough volume for this class? You've got to figure out if you can get somebody who's going to have the knowledge, right?
Correct.
Have the know-how.
For sure. And we have the know-how.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, what I hear from some shops is, we used to sublet, then we tried in-house, and that worked really well for a little while, and now we're back to subletting, and now we're thinking about going in-house again, and it might go back and forth because the market's always changing. And we want to talk about changing markets. Let's talk about the pandemic, and let's talk a little bit about repair versus replace. The pandemic forced shops to come up with some creative solutions for parts when parts just weren't available. Can you talk a little bit about how Novus Glass repositioned themselves on repair versus replace over the course of the pandemic?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Great news for us as the auto glass industry is concerned. Through the pandemic, we were very fortunate that our distribution networks across Canada, so aka the auto glass warehouses, if you will, across the country, and the supply chain in general was very well stocked, and they stay up very well on inventory.
Did you have a fortune teller on the payroll just before?
Well, no, you have to think that the auto glass industry and the distribution industry specifically they're about a 6 to 8 month lead time. So they're ordering today what they estimate they need for the next 8 months in advance.
My mind boggles trying to consider ordering 8 months in advance. I can't even imagine that. So you guys were well positioned just because you had to be anyway.
Exactly. That is just the nature of the auto glass industry. Just because, again, the level of inventory that's required, there's only X amount of manufacturers. So each one of those distribution warehouses, they're well ahead in their order. So therefore, when it hit, there was inventory coming in. There was inventory on the shelves, and there was inventory coming. And that inventory, we weren't really held because of any kind of electronic bits and widgets that were needed to complete that. The manufacturing made it. The biggest challenge we had, and we didn't really see it to the end of the pandemic, but actually getting the product to land on shore. But fortunately, again, between all the distribution houses, our network remained really unscathed, if you will. I would say the only caveat to it would be any of the brand new models, let's say 2022, that maybe not available through the aftermarket manufacturers or the OEEs. That we were dependent on a dealership chain in order to acquire that OEM part. But that is such a small part of our business anyway. We run into those challenges of putting our hands on that type of equipment, I would say, in normal times. And so for us, we were very fortunate that we didn't suffer too much on that side. Our uptake was good. Our sales increased through the pandemic. And, as it relates to our repair versus replacements, we maintained our percentages pretty much right across the board. So I have no complaints considering everything that went through, considering all of the connections that we have with the collision industry and watching some of the challenges that those guys went through. That industry was definitely there, very, very heavily hit on the OE parts. And so they were very much challenged. And so, from a glass perspective, I'm happy to say that we've come out of that pretty good.
Even I would say from my experience coming from the auto service and, in parts part of the world, I would compliment what Vern said too. In our business world, we were, relatively unscathed from the supply chain challenges of the pandemic as well. So, it's very, it's very strange from different industries. That safety stock that some of these distribution warehouses built up were effective, and a lot of companies that were lean distribution for long periods of time were kind of hit by that. But you see some of these facilities, Napa Auto Parts, UAP, and Worldpac and CarQuest are building across the country with hundreds of thousands of square footage, and it definitely had an impact to be able to protect the market from going through that.
Well, of the pandemic, what I hear from a lot of shops is that as turnaround times narrow and continue to narrow in shops, right before the pandemic, it became a lot easier to just replace everything. It doesn't matter, just replace if it's possible. But the pandemic was an eye-opening experience in some cases because people started tackling repairs that they hadn't repaired in years, or that they hadn't considered repairing, or that people, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but shops that I've been talking to came out of the pandemic with a better understanding of how to do things in terms of options.
I would say that's a good assessment.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Let's talk options with glass repair. Replace, got a big windshield, heavy. Everybody loves to replace those, but let's talk crack repair and what kind of options shops have and how you guys fit into that.
For our side, obviously, we're a repair first company. That's what Novus is known for. Novus Glass is known as the inventors of the windshield repair. So for us, it's a big part of our strategy. We look at it as a first route for anything, obviously, for a whole variety of reasons. Obviously, we've got proprietary equipment and resins that all of our franchisee partners have at their disposal to do those types of repairs. They are fully trained as they're onboarded to do so. So it's always an option, obviously. There are circumstances where our repair is just not an option insofar as chip repair. So on repair side for us, there's two options that we have, and we have stone chip repair, which is obviously basically by its name, it is what it is. And we also have the ability to do some crack repairs. The crack repair piece for us is one where it's not as, let's say, as popular as a chip repair, just because of it's more fragile. Our ability to do cracks is really dependent, and even for chips for that matter, is really dependent on contamination in the glass. So obviously, if you have a small chip, the space for contamination is much less. Our ability to clean that space and to do a good repair that will hold really indefinitely for us, it's a very doable thing. Our repairs, once a windshield is repaired for a chip repair, we're about a 95 to 98% stay repaired for the duration of that car. They're more likely to get another chip or break somewhere else before it spreads from the chip.
Is this one of those broken arm, heals back stronger deals?
Yeah, that's it. Okay. On the crack repair side, again, you can repair a crack up to 12 to 18 inches long. The challenge is that there's also a lot of room for contamination in that space, and to clean that and to be able to do that. So it's a very time sensitive thing for a crack repair. There are certain cases where it makes perfect sense to do so if the damage is correct, if it's out of the sight of a driver, for example. So there's a whole variety of places where it can be used. It's obviously far more economical to do a crack repair than a replacement when it's possible. So we have that as an option for available at our locations as well.
Well, if it's more economical and is potentially a lot faster, especially in cases of subletting, then why wouldn't more people employ crack repair? What do you think is standing in the way of crack repair taking over glass?
I think there would be a lot of misunderstanding about the crack repair process, for one. I think there's been a lot of, I know that there's been a lot of negative spin around crack repair and its strength and its durability and its safety. And that's driven for a multiple variety of reasons. As you can imagine, from the distribution perspective, they're not real fond of a crack repair process because every time one of those cracked windshields are repaired, it's not being replaced. So therefore, the supply chain takes a hit, obviously. But having said that, I think just traditionally, it's just been, that's not safe. You shouldn't do that. I don't think that that will last. I don't think that this will pass the safety, all of those types of things. And so I would say our number one job at Novus Glass is to educate our clientele. And it's educating them on what we can do, being honest and straightforward when we cannot perform that service, when the service is not doesn't fit, but certainly have it as an option for our client if the service does fit, right? And so we've had, and I'll give you an example, we've had some scenarios where, it could be very we'll say a less than common car. If you had like a foreign car that maybe windshield's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 and it takes 6 months to get, well, geez, why don't we just do a crack repair? Is it going to be the most beautiful? Will it all of those sorts of things? Maybe, but maybe not. But man, we have absolutely nothing to lose and only to gain to try to make that glass stronger, to try to make it meet the OEM, recommendations as far as strength and durability and all of those things. So I think for us, it's just an opportunity to provide a service and a place and a time whereby it works for all parties.
There's a lot to unpack there. So you're saying it's not an either or circumstance. You can always be trying to repair. It's not going to ruin anything, and then you can try and replace. That's not always the case with everything around the car, right?
No, 100%. I agree. Yep, for sure.
And I just got to say, it makes me think that you're fighting the past in a lot of ways. I mean, I see a 12-inch crack. I'm going to think, oof, I don't know.
Exactly.
But you're saying that the technology in crack repair has now advanced past the point where you can think the same way we were thinking 20 years ago.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, not just the technology. The technology is one thing. Our resins enable in order to do so. In fact, Novus holds a patent and currently have resins where we can do a crack repair that's in front of an ADAS camera. So if you start to think about doing just a conventional crack repair in the bottom left-hand corner where it's really a non-issue either way, our chemist has developed a resin where is so transparent that we can do crack repairs. If that should happen to fall in that space, we can still perform that service in that spot if need be and do it safely and meet all of the the requirements to make sure that it stays safe and that it meets all of those, OEM type.
So you want one of the takeaways here to be you can repair more than you think you can.
Absolutely. Again, for us, the first question that we should be that we need to ask a customer is, where is the damage? What is the damage? And if that CSR or owner operator thinks that that's an option for our clients, we invite the clients to come to the store or send us a picture of your car. Let us have a look at the damage. And before you start deciding to spend $1,500 on a replacement, let's see what we can do. Let's have a look at it. And, it's basically an additional option to the traditional straight up replacement. Right.
And then we're winding back to the old adage of options for a shop. And the more options a shop has, the more you can tailor what you're doing with turnaround time and with customer needs to try and increase revenue. So is that one of the ways, like shop possibilities, that we can talk about how glass can be a revenue source, or is there Is there more going on with glass?
So as Vern mentioned, with with COVID, and to a degree, maybe not so much on the glass side, impacting supply chain, but with constraint on new vehicles and that perspective, obviously having the ability to manage crack repair with our proprietary technology and our trainings, and our training systems really sets us apart with that customer experience and how we manage that relationship, with our clients for Novus Glass. So to answer your question, absolutely, the customer experience is integral to our business philosophy, and what we feel is having the ability, the knowledge, and the understanding to be able to manage more than just replacements, to be able to do that crack repair is absolutely part of our philosophy and part of our competitive advantage for potential revenue sources for shops.
Let's take a little sidestep here and talk a bit about ADAS, because you mentioned ADAS earlier, Vern. ADAS has gotten into everything. I feel like I can't open my car door without wanting to reset, all the sensors. How has it affected glass?
Well, I'll start on that, and then I'll flip it over to Zach. I guess from the auto glass industry, I would say to start is there's, I would say currently 3 buckets, if you will. We have glass shops who will not do a replacement if the client will not authorize calibration, first and foremost. We'll have a bucket who I would say understand that calibration is a requirement, however, may not have the technology in order to do so. So they will advise customers straight up, we'll do the windshield replacement. You should take this somewhere and get the calibration done. We think it's important, but we're not going there. And then unfortunately, we have a bucket of people in our industry who believe if you don't unplug the camera, that everything is okay. It should be fine. We'll just put the bracket back on and it should be fine. Well, the should be fines don't cut it anymore. And I'm not unplugging a camera because you don't make a light shine on the dashboard doesn't mean that that camera has been readjusted in exactly the same place as when the original glass was put in. So those I would say are the three main buckets that we are in today. I think as time goes on, we'll be more of the number 2 and more of the number 1 as well, right? As the only option will be, and I think some of our insurance partners I see again not being able to see in the future, but I would have to suspect that they're going to start to make sure that the glass shops that they are working with can provide that as a standard offering with glass replacement, so that the customer is not exposed to driving that car around with that deactivated for whatever reason. So to add to that, and Zach will share some numbers on calibration in a bit. From the glass perspective, again, going back in my history, and I got a little bit in this business, but 10 to 15 years ago, we were talking about calibration. We were working with companies like Bosch on developing the technology. We were working on the necessity. How long is it going to take? How much longer is it going to take? Because auto glass is typically a same-day type service. So the offering and what we present to our clients, you're trying to maintain that level of service and that level of delivery. When we're faced with this thing called calibration, how much of it what does it do? What will it do? How will it affect? How long will it take? The technology was being developed. The only thing that we knew for sure is that, and that the early adapters knew for sure, is that it's going to come and it's not going to be an option. So we need to start talking about it. And so again, I still see within the industry, and even like not just the auto glass industry, but even more so in the collision industry, where the having to adapt and having the tools and having those things ready in-house to perform an ADAS calibration is still challenging. Where in the auto glass world, it's part of some of the auto glass in our industry, it's part of the marketing campaigns that we do this. This is what we do. This is what we, don't worry about that. This is so I would think from the glass perspective, we were forced to look at it. We were forced to adapt to that change. tool up for it, again, because you were being held, otherwise you're being held ransom, if you will, and maybe ransom's not the right word, but you're being held to somebody else's availability to perform that service. And that's affecting my relationship with my client. So if I have to send that to the dealer and they can't do it for 2 weeks, that's on me, right? So as a glass shop. So I think in that part, I think we were, we adapted to that in the auto glass industry pretty early on. It was kind of like when we do a windshield replacement, we have to take the wiper arms off. Whatever has to happen for that to happen, we need to figure it out. And so this was just the next evolution in, of the process of what we have to do. So I think one of the other important things about ADAS is, on a go forward basis, is that it's something that's here to stay. I mean, from the National Safety Council, they're projecting, in the next 5 years, it's going to be a $20 billion industry. That's calibration by itself. We're not talking about the auto glass business anymore. And so we're seeing some trends in the auto glass business. At one of our trade conferences 3 years ago, it was interesting because we had a panel up there talking about ADAS, and 3 of those guys on that panel were auto glass shops that had diversified from their glass shops and started calibration shops, because calibration demand was so big in their marketplace. They were one of the few that had the tools to do it. They were in front of the trend, and so other auto glass shops were sending their cars to them. They would do the install, but need calibration, right? So, and then the collision shops, they weren't doing calibration, so they were having cars towed in and flatbedded in so that calibration could be done. So I think it's just going to become the norm within a glass shop. And aside from that, I think we're going to see more calibration only type businesses. And I think those probably who are involved in the industry, who see the potential of that. So whether it's auto glass industry, whether it's early adapters on the collision side, I think they'll see that as a separate revenue stream and a separate business model, even if you wanted to look at it that way. So
someone mentioned the other day to me that it was our national trainer Christian. He made a comment when I was doing some glass training with him that Honda is moving to a platform that all wheel alignments on new vehicles will also require an ADAS calibration as part of OE spec standards. So, to complement what Vern just said, like from the perspective of, whether it's the mechanical business, whether it's the collision business, or whether it's the glass business, all components of collision repair, mechanical repair, and glass replacement is going to be a focus of having to be in that world of ADAS. So just some stats to provide to you, James. We are partnered with Autel as our approved national partner for our calibration equipment at Novus Glass. So some of the stats in the US that they provide us, as of 2019, 27% of US vehicles were produced with ADAS equipment. In 2023, projections were 100% of all US vehicles, due to those safety standard legislation changes that Vern mentioned, we're going to be equipped with ADAS. So you can think in terms of the growth of the industry, and as well as the complexities of how, as OE specs, and repair diagrams and so on change, how that affects the growth and integration of ADAS into our world moving forward. So,
well, you can't argue with 100%, right? You can't stand against the wind. ADAS is going to be everywhere. ADAS is going to be on every part of the car it possibly can be. I did
an AIA training seminar, panel a few years back. I think it was 3-4 years ago, when we talked about the levels of autonomy with vehicles, and as vehicles transition from level 1 to level 5 of autonomous vehicles, and as the electrification of vehicles moves through the evolution of the of our industry, 100%. It's everything is going to be integrated with cameras. It's going to be integrated with data. It's going to be integrated on connecting. Fully level 5 autonomous will be connecting devices to to the vehicles, to have smart monitoring and smart safety standards and so on and so forth. So, it's the complexities are going to change, but ADAS is definitely here to stay.
So the takeaway here is that Glass is ready for ADAS, and in fact was having these discussions when we were still trying to avoid the issue 15 years ago. And you're ready. You're ready for the future.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Wild. All right. So let's get a little broader. What do you want collision repair shops to know about Glass that you think they don't know?
So Vern and I put together a bit of an answer here. So
this is my favorite one, because for all these things, because a podcast is such a great opportunity for different verticals in the industry to talk to each other, and this is your time.
So
listen here, shops.
Yeah, as a franchise brand, as Fixed Network Canada, we obviously have 3 segments that we touch as a bumper to bumper solution for people trying to enter the industry, or for our franchisees to branch into new segments of the industry to get into different areas and provide different services, as Vern built upon. So, what we would like to take away, to tell people about what they need to know about Glass, is that from the perspective of ADAS and what we currently mentioned, and how we spoke about how we're the solution, with proprietary tools and training and operational support and insurance relationships and dedicated sales team, that we have all of the dynamics to be able to support a revenue stream for people to get into the Glass business and to support it as a sustainable long-term business solution for them. So, and in terms of what message we want to deliver, that's my message. So,
but also it sounds like you're there to offer Glass solutions, but you can also be offering ADAS solutions at this point. Is that too far?
No, I'd say the ADAS solution is built into our, into the model of our Glass business. So it's part and parcel. Absolutely.
ADAS is Glass. You got to.
ADAS is Glass, and Glass is ADAS. Absolutely.
100%.
Wow.
But, and especially as I mentioned, coming from my mechanical background in a different part of the industry, is that from all the shops that I dealt with in one specific region, there was not one specific shop that was able or had the capabilities to manage ADAS. And as Vern mentioned, on the collision side of the business, with that relationship with subletting, and as I mentioned, with certain situations that I came across from people trying to get into it but not having the expertise or understanding from an operational support and a methodology perspective on what they were actually getting into, that with the right system, the right support mechanisms, the right training, and the right dynamics, that people that might be afraid of that there's a massive opportunity to be able to take advantage of this growing segment of the business. So
you'll have to forgive me, guys. When I think of Glass, and you can make fun of me, but when I think of Glass, it doesn't seem like the part of the car that's making the most technological advancements. But you're telling me the opposite, that Glass is on the cutting edge, if you'll forgive the pun, is on the cutting edge of the kind of advancements we're seeing in the automotive sector and in collision.
Well, by default, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we're implicated. To your point, Glass is still Glass. It's just something we look through. Having said that, there is heating elements that are integrated into Glass today. There's heads-up displays in the lamination that are integrated into the Glass. For the basic installation, all of those things are just by a default. They're just there by default. That technology is just there by default. ADAS is another one. It's there. It's not really integrated in the Glass, but it's integrated on the Glass. And so therefore, you're subject to touching it. You're subject to making sure that the bracketry that comes on the new replacement Glass is correct, that the camera's mounted on the Glass, correct, that when you do your calibration, you've done all your checks and balances, that when you do your calibration, you're printing your pre and post, you're showing all of the details to an insurance partner or to a client, whoever may be, and sometimes both actually. So yeah, it's becoming more and more complicated. Obviously, for glass shops who are ready to invest in calibration equipment, it's going to separate them. I think we're going to see a separation in the industry for sure. And I can tell you, even from within our network, we talk about again, ADAS and those sorts of pieces from when, they've joined the network. And then again, we've been talking about for some time, and they join the network and then they're hesitant. And then, we hold a training seminar and we'll show them, again, 10,000 foot view of what this calibration equipment is. Like, it's a tablet. Do you have a computer at home? Do you follow instructions well? Well, that's where we're at. This is the equipment. And so we're seeing some of those guys who were really, standoffish, maybe is a word I could use, nervous. There's a variety of words you could use there. But once they've adapted to it, once they realize it's not going anywhere, once they make the investment, their investments are paid back usually within the first year because of the volume now they can do. They're not scared to take any type of vehicle in because that car, well, geez, Jane, I'd like to do your car, but it's got calibration, and gee, I don't know if I can do it this week. And so you might try to dance around it, if you will, right? Where now that's no longer an issue. If I have it and I have the training and I have the equipment to do it, then it doesn't matter what kind of car you drive, you just bring it in and we're equipped to do it. And again, once I think we get past that, the mystery of what calibration is in our industry, I can think of 2 or 3 shops right off the top of my head that have taken calibration to the next level, where they're not just doing calibration for their own business, they're calibrating for dealerships, they're calibrating for body shops. We have some guys that have equipped a mobile van and started a separate business, as I mentioned earlier. We have those guys within our network today. So they're not just stories that we've heard or stories of people that we heard, or a guy that knows a guy. That's happening in our network today. So
the exciting world of glass. Wow.
For sure.
That's great. Wow, you guys are leaving me feeling really inspired about the future of collision repair and glass. Is there anything else you want to leave on? What note do you want to end on for this, guys?
How do you wrap it up, Zach?
Yeah, no, as I mentioned, we're super excited at Novus to be able to focus on the future of what our business is going to look like. And as Vern mentioned, it's for us to be able to focus within our network, to be able to provide that comfort and that operational support and expertise to our current repair network, what expands across Canada. Everyone knows the fixed network and the footprint we have. So, I think that's a really exciting opportunity, and as well as the retail opportunity that's out there, that demystifying the automotive world and using our value tools to be able to demystify it across the mechanical segment and further into the glass segment, to be able to expand our reach and continue the development of our network moving forward. So,
all right. Will glass show us the future? It remains to be seen. But at least we have a clear picture from Novus Glass. I'd like to thank my guests today. I had Zakari Krieger, VP of Prime Car Care, and Vern Gervais, the National Director, Novus Glass Canada. And thank you everyone for listening to Industry Insider Radio. I'm James Kerr. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening: Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And tune in next time for another episode of Industry Insider Radio. Thank you for listening. Today's episode was brought to you by Novus Glass. Repair first, replace when necessary. The affordable auto glass solution. For more information on Novus Glass, please visit their website at www.novusglass.com.